Once Lakshman disappeared down the same forest path that Ram had taken. I sat down heavily on the threshold, covered my face with my hands, and wept in regret and despair. How beautiful the day had begun, and look where we were now. It was all my fault. Why had I wanted that deer so much? Thinking back, I could not understand it. It had been like a fever, that strange desire that had gripped me as though I had been bewitched. And though I didn't regret forcing Lakshman to go to Ram's help, I cringed when I remembered the cruel tactics I had used. The hurt and then the disgust in his eye that I could say such things. Just let Ram be safe, I cried over and over. Please, Goddess, let him come back to me quickly. I promise I will never ask him or you for anything again. And I will apologize profusely to Lakshman. I will. I will explain to him that I never meant any of those harsh words. I will let him spend as much time with his brother as he wants, and I will stay out of their way. Often, when I prayed fervently for something, there was a sign, but today, nothing. Clearly, I had angered the goddess, and who could blame her when I had been so selfish and stupid? I was startled from my entreaties by gentle voice. Good day, lady. The blessings of a sadhu upon you and your house. A man stood in the clearing just outside the boundary Lakshman had drawn around me. Its fiery contours now faded into dusty ordinariness. He was dressed in the orange robes of a holy mendicant. He must have been on the road for a while because his robes were tattered and his hair, falling about his face, was matted and unkempt. We had come across wandering sadhus like him as we traversed the forest, though recently, as we went deeper into Panchavati, we had seen less of them. I always enjoyed their description of their journeys and their words of wisdom. It was a special pleasure to see their hungry eyes light up as I offered them whatever simple meal I had prepared. I was particularly thankful to see this sadhu today and decided to ask him to keep me company until the men returned. Talking to him would keep my mind from the horrific images my wild imagination kept conjuring up. Ram injured, Ram fallen into a pit, perhaps, or stuck in a bog, Ram lying alone, close to death. When my husband returned safe and sound, as surely he would, by divine grace, the sadhu's presence would temper some of his anger. Ram was rarely angry, but this time, when he learned of the unforgivable things I had said to Lakshman, I knew he would be furious. I greeted the sadhu respectfully and asked him his name. You may call me the Shashan, he replied. It was a strange name, one I hadn't heard before. The sadhu must have seen my surprise because he gave me a wry smile and said, "Ten headed." It refers to the many weaknesses that make me stumble on the spiritual path. But enough of me. Who are you, maiden? And why are you alone in this dangerous forest? Speaking was a welcome respite from worry. So I told him my name and how I had been found in the earth of Mithila, so that no one really knew where I came from, and how Ram had married me by lifting and stringing Shiva's great bow. Sita, he said. Sita. He spoke my name slowly, meditatively. I thought I saw a glint in his eyes, but I must have been mistaken, for when he looked at me, his pupils were old and dull and glazed over with cataracts. Fascinating story, your marriage. How many wonders there are in this creation. Tell me more about your adventures. That was all the encouragement I needed. I described my beloved Ram to him in great detail and his loyal brother Lakshman also. I explained about Kaikeyi and the boons she had been able to claim because men from the house of Raghu never went back on their promise. I described our 13 years of difficult wandering and listened with some satisfaction to his words of sympathy and his praise because he thought I had been such a good wife and put up with so much. Finally, I told him of the golden deer and confessed, a little shamefacedly, how I had fought with my husband and forced him to go after it. I even voiced my fear that it might be a wicked Rakshasa in disguise. It might, indeed, the sage said, and a strange look, akin to sorrow, passed over his face. In which case, it would have led your husband far into the wilderness, for Rakshasas are willy creatures. That is too bad, for I would have loved to meet your illustrious husband, such a brave warrior, a veritable scourge to evil Rakshasas everywhere. But I can't delay any longer. There is a holy cave some distance from here, and I must reach it before nightfall. Please rest a while in the shade of our porch, I entreated. Ram and Lakshman will be back soon. Lakshman will bring you fresh fruits. Ram will fetch water to wash your feet. I will gather the wild rice which grows by the river bank and cook it for you, along with the vegetables from my garden. I am a fast cook. There will still be plenty of time for you to reach your cave. But the sadhu shook his head. My vows of monkhood will not allow that. Already I have spent too long with you, a woman and a householder, and I am afraid this has reduced my merits. I am not supposed to even step onto the shadow of a house, let alone take comfort on its porch. If you wish to give me alms, you may give them now, but I can only accept them from where I am standing. It would be a great shame if a holy man left our house, makeshift though it was, empty handed. I ran inside and gathered in the pallu of my sari whatever food I had, just a few fruits, unfortunately. But when I came out, I realized that the sage stood too far away for me to reach him without crossing the boundary Lakshman had created for me. I did not quite believe that staying inside the line would keep me from all harm. But having spoken so many cruel words to Lakshman, I did not want to further upset him by disregarding his dictum. Please come a little closer, says, I said, a little embarrassedly, pointing to the line. I am not supposed to cross this rekha. Even I spoke, it seemed a silly thing to say. The sadhu drew himself up. I could feel indignation rising from him, shimmering like heat waves on a summer day. His face grew dark with anger. I resigned myself to a tongue lashing. Why was it that our holy men, who made a big deal of giving up so many things, comfort, fame, family, could not seem to give up their tempers? Are you trying to tempt me, woman? He cried. Are you trying to lure me near to you so that I will break my vow? Didn't I just tell you I do not set foot in the compounds of householders? Forget about your arms. I don't want them. One more day of going hungry will not kill me. But I must say, this is not the kind of hospitality I expected from the house of Raghu or from the daughter of Janak or Sunaina. His words sent my mind spinning. Living with Ram, I had taken on some of his sensitivities. I knew how mortified he would be if he learned that a sadhu had left our home complaining that he was disappointed by Raghu hospitality. But worse, by calling cleverly on my father and mother, he had made me feel personally guilty. How did he even know their names? I hadn't told him anything about them. Clearly, the sage had occult powers. It had been a prime rule in my parents' palace that no one, holy mendicant or common beggar, went away hungry. My mother had impressed upon me that it was our duty as householders to take care of the guests that landed at our door, invited or otherwise. By failing in that duty, might I bring a new spate of bad luck down on us? Holy men often possessed strange cities. Might his ill will obstruct our safe return to Ayodhya, to Ram's long awaited coronation? I swayed between my two choices, breaking my illogical promise to Lakshman or failing in my duty to my guest, who was additionally a holy man. Which was worse? What would Ram have wanted me to do? At this moment, the face that rose in my mind, strangely, was that of my father in law. For the first time, I felt a deep sympathy for King Dashrath and the options he had been faced with, far more difficult than mine, complicated further by the bonds of love. To break his word to his favorite wife or to unfairly banish his dearest son. There are no easy answers, Dashrath's voice said inside my head. Especially when we want to please the one we love. That same love clouds our eyes and does not allow us to see what is right in front of us. There was no more time to debate the issue. The sadhu had stomped off towards the same thicket where, seemingly a lifetime ago, the golden deer had vanished. Stop, says, I cried. I am coming. As soon as I stepped over Lakshman's Rekha, I knew I had made a huge mistake. It was not only because of the pain that went through me as though a thousand thorns had pricked me at once, it was also the sage. One moment he was half hidden in forest foliage, and the next he was beside me. I didn't understand how he could move so fast. In fact, I hadn't seen him move at all. He had my arm in a hot vice grip and was twisting it so that pain ran up all the way to my neck like a wave of fire. His face had changed. The gaunt mendicant features transformed into a handsome, proud, and triumphant visage. There was a crown on his head. Golden woven robes covered him, and the jewels in his ears and on his arms dazzled me. Even as I stared at him in horrific disbelief, I understood that everything I had seen before was a glamour spell. Rakshasa glamour. But where had he come from? Ram and Lakshman had been certain that they had killed all the Rakshasas in the Panchavati forest. Shall I chop off your nose and ears like your husband and his brother did to my sister? He asked. Or shall I torture and kill you and leave your mutilated body for them to find, as I found my brothers? The anger that quivered in his voice was cold and controlled, his accent elegant but unfamiliar. I should have been too terrified and distraught to notice these things, but I did. The mind works in strange ways. Yes, indeed, because my mind was busy figuring out who this stranger was and why he had come here, why he had chosen me as his prey. He was saying, of course, because even through my anguish and anger, how could I blame him for what he was doing? Exacting retribution for the disfigured Surpanaka and for his brothers who had fought to death in their efforts to avenge her. This must be the other brother Shurpanaka had mentioned, the one who ruled a beautiful distant land across the ocean. I tried to remember if she had told us his name, but my heart pounded so loudly I could not think. I listened for Ram and Lakshman, hoping against hope to hear the crunch of leaves under their footsteps. But there was nothing. The deer Rakshasa that Surpanaka's brother must have brought with him had led Ram far away indeed. I was alone. I had only myself to depend on. I ignored the burning pain in my arm and shoulder and kicked him with all my strength. I was ready to leap on him and gouge out his eyes in an instant. But the Rakshasa didn't even flinch. Instead, he laughed and put me effortlessly into a chokehold so tight that it cut off my breath. In a moment, things were swimming in front of my eyes. In another moment, I would be unconscious or maybe dead from a broken neck. Go ahead and do what you will. I gasped while I still had the strength to speak. Surpanaka's bleeding face rose in my mind. Inside, I prayed he would kill me quickly. And if he tortured me, cutting pieces off my body slowly and eating them away in front of my eyes, as some sages had told us Rakshasas like to do, I prayed I would have the fortitude to not beg for mercy. The Rakshasa did neither. Instead, he loosened his grip on my throat. I bent over, wheezing and coughing. But I kept my wary eyes on him, partly to be ready for what he would do next, and partly because there might be another chance to attack him. The Rakshasa gave me a long, considering look. There was, I think, some admiration in it. Then his face hardened. Death would be too easy for you, and I am not the kind of person, unlike your husband, who disfigures a woman and abandons her to a lifetime of sorrow and shame. Nor do I eat human flesh. Most asuras don't. I bet the rishis didn't tell you that, did they? This is what I am going to do instead. I will take you away to my kingdom and leave your husband to a lifetime of searching and mourning and regretting knowing that he brought this fate upon you. To be taken captive, to spend years, perhaps my entire life, in some faraway Rakshasa kingdom as a slave. To know all the while that my beloved husband was looking everywhere for me, crazed with sorrow, for that is the kind of man Ram was, never to give up. To fear that he might not ever find me, or that even if he knew where I was, he would be unable to rescue me. How could he, with only Lakshman to help him, even if he was the best warrior in the world? I imagined the two of them searching vainly in the wilderness, never returning to Ayodhya, because how could they return, admitting in shame that they had allowed me to be abducted? Sorrow lanced me sharper than any fear I had had for myself. Truly, this was a far worse punishment than a swift death. I struggled mightily. I kicked and clawed at the Rakshasa, and in between, I yelled for help. By now, I knew I could not defeat him, but I was hoping I could delay him until Ram returned. My nails raised welts on his dark, smooth skin. Even for a Rakshasa, it must have hurt. But he only smiled a wolfish grin. I could see he was enjoying my futile efforts. And then he whistled. It was a high, wild sound, and in response, something came hurtling down from the sky, some kind of a giant, glittering bird. No, it was a chariot unlike anything I had ever seen or imagined, huge and silver and thrumming, with metal wings. I was so amazed I could not help staring in open mouthed wonder. For a moment, I even forgot to struggle. This is Pushpak, the Rakshasa said with pride, the best flying chariot in the world. I wrested it from a half brother Kubera because he thought he was so much better than us Asuras. I think It likes being with me better. Don't you, Pushpak? The machine made a purring sound. Come along now, said the Rakshasa. There will be plenty of time for chatting later. And I would like to be back in my palace by dinner time. I am rather hungry. That part of what I told you was true. I kicked and screamed with renewed vigor, but he grabbed me unceremoniously around my middle and threw me over his shoulder. I tore at his back, screaming for help. Only my echoes answered me. Only the vines I had planted around the hut reached out and wound themselves around my wrists and ankles to hold me back. The Rakshasa cut through them easily with his sword, leaving them slashed to pieces, dying on the ground. I could feel their pain as life drained out of them. This made me so furious that I forgot to be afraid. Tell me your real name, you coward, I shouted, kicking at his shins as he pulled me onto the chariot. For clearly you are a coward, you shameless creature, to steal a man's wife when he is not around. If I had hoped to make the Rakshasa lose his temper, I failed. He flashed me another grin, sharp and triumphant and a little wry. Not a coward, merely a strategist with a penchant for justice. Your husband has already killed so many of my kinsmen. It wouldn't be right to endanger more of them. And what could be a more fitting punishment for a man who has destroyed a woman's chance of finding love than to snatch from him the woman he loves? For him to know she is a captive in an Asura king's palace, the latest object of his kingly affections. His last words made me shudder. What did he mean? He was looking at me, a hot glint in his eyes. I couldn't tell if he was serious or if he was trying to frighten me. As for my name, the Rakshasa continued, raising his voice as though in a challenge. I am Ravan, ruler of Lanka across the ocean. Let Ram come there, if he can even find it, and rescue you if he dares. Ravan. A jolt went through my brain. That same Asura king who had come to Mithila a lifetime ago, it seemed. His face was different now, his handsomeness grown heavy, with harsh lines around the mouth, a weariness in the eyes. Had he not told me his name, I wouldn't have guessed him to be the king who had strode into the great hall with such a confidence, wrapped in a gold glittering spell. When he failed at lifting the magic bow that was my bride price, how furious he had been. How afraid my parents were that he would create mayhem, but because of his love for Shiva, he had controlled himself and left peacefully. As though it was yesterday, I remembered the strange feeling of recognition I had had when our eyes met for the moment. An odd closeness, a bond from some other world. Perhaps if I felt it again, I could appeal to the better part of him. Perhaps he would listen. I forced myself to look into Ravan's eyes, trying to call up that mysterious closeness again. But there was no sense of recognition this time. no feeling of being wafted into another world. It was like looking into an opaque pool, one which, if you fell into it, would pull you into its drowning depths. If Ravan noticed me staring, he gave no indication of it. He whispered a word. His tone was affectionate, and the chariot hummed in reply. We shot up into the air at a speed I hadn't previously imagined possible. Below us, my hut and the clearing in which it sat shrank into a dot, then into nothingness as it was swallowed by the forest. The forest too shrank until it was no bigger than a bedsheet pocked by peaks. Rivers glinted here and there in it, thin threads of silver. Somewhere deep inside, a part of me marveled at the sight even as I flailed and screamed. Round held me off easily, the corner of his mouth lifting in a small, mocking smile. He didn't try to stop me. When my voice grew hoarse and my arms too tired to punch him, I prayed to the goddess to save me. When she was silent, I prayed to the rest of gods, anyone who came to my mind. But the sky above me remained empty. The gods, if indeed they even existed, had their own plan, and it didn't coincide with my distressed need. For a moment, I thought I would throw myself out of the chariot. It would be worth it just to foil the Demon King's plan. But I didn't. It was not that I was afraid of death. How could I be? I knew nothing of it. Still, I didn't want to die. Not without seeing Ram one more time. Time sped by us, roaring like a horde of beasts. How far did I travel? How long did it take? I don't know. I think I was in a trance. Perhaps it was Rakshasa magic. Perhaps it was shock. Vaguely, I remember a giant bird flying at the chariot, cursing Ravan in a human voice, declaring his name, Jatayu. He tried valiantly to rescue me, but he was old, and Ravan chopped off his wings without even a moment's hesitation, leaving him to spiral down to his death, spewing blood, while I stared in guilty horror because he had died in his efforts to save me. Elsewhere, on a mountain peak below, a group of hairy men, or were they monkeys, sat clustered conferring. I threw down my jewelry to them, necklace, bangles, anklets. Give them to Ram, I cried. Tell him that Ravan of Lanka has stolen his Sita. Tell him that she will be waiting for him to come and rescue her. But we were too high up for them to hear my words. The jewelry fell through the air, glinting like teardrops, and was lost in the dense foliage. Time tightened around me like a whirlpool. I think I lost consciousness. Maybe it was because Ravan spoke to me in an amorous tone that was more frightening than all the threatening he had done earlier. It seemed to me we swooped low over an ocean froth white with waves beneath which churned tentacled monsters. Then we soared upward into black clouds edged with lightning until my hair crackled with the currents. When I woke up groggy, I was inside a walled city made of gold, situated atop a mountain. It shone so bright it almost blinded me. The walls were many stories tall, and heavily armed guards patrolled atop them constantly. The main gate was attended by shining noble beings that seemed to be gods. I recalled hearing tales that Ravan had defeated the Celestials and forced them to wait upon him in Lanka. Even if my poor husband managed to get this far, over the churning, monster infested ocean, what chance did he have to overcome them? How would he ever enter the city, fiercely guarded as it was? What hope then was there for me? Thanks for listening. I was startled from a entreaties by a gentle voice. Good day, lady. The blessings of a sadhu upon you and your house. Entreaty entreaty means an earnest or humble request. A man stood in the clearing just outside the boundary Lakshman had drawn around me. Its fiery contours now faded into dusty ordinariness. Contour contour means outline. He was dressed in the orange robes of a holy mendicant. Mendacant means a sage. He must have been on the road for a while because his robes were tattered and his hair, falling about his face, was matted and unkempt. Unkempt unkempt means not neat or cared for, especially of a person disheveled appearance. When my husband returned safe and sound, as surely he would, by divine grace, the sadhu's presence would temper some of his anger. Temper means a person's state of mind seen in terms of their being angry or calm. It might, indeed, the sage said, and a strange look akin to sorrow passed over his face. Akin means similar. His face grew dark with anger. I resigned myself to a tongue lashing. Tongue lashing means a loud or severe scolding. I knew how mortified he would be if he learned that a sadhu had left our home complaining that he was disappointed by Raghu hospitality. Mortify means humiliate. Clearly, the sage had occult powers. Occult occult means mystical, supernatural or magical. There was no more time to debate the issue. The sadhu had stomped off towards the same thicket where, seemingly a lifetime ago, the golden deer had vanished. Stomp off, STOMP, stomp, OWF, stomp off means leave a place in angry. The anger that quivered in his voice was cold and controlled. QUIVER, quiver means tremble or shake. I was ready to leap on him and gouge out his eyes in an instant. Gouge out. Gouge out means to remove something by digging or cutting. But the Rakshasa did not even flinch. Flinch means make a quick nervous movement as an instinctive reaction to fear, pain, or surprise. Inside, I prayed he would kill me quickly. And if he tortured me, cutting pieces of my body slowly and eating them raw in front of my eyes, as some sages had told us Rakshasas like to do, I prayed I would have the fortitude to not beg for mercy. Fortitude, fortitude means courage in pain or adversity. My nails raised welts on his dark, smooth skin. Even for a Rakshasa, it must have hurt. Welts, welts means a red raised mark. And he whistled. It was a high, wild sound, and in response, something came hurtling down from the sky, some kind of a giant glittering bird. No, it was a chariot unlike anything I had ever seen or imagined, huge and silver and thrumming with metal wings. Thrumming means a continuous rhythmic humming sound. Not a coward, merely a strategist with a penchant for justice. Penchant penchant means a strong or habitual liking. Somewhere deep inside, a part of me marveled at the sight even as I flailed and screamed. Flail means beat, thrash. When I woke up groggy, I was inside a walled city made of gold, situated atop a mountain. Groggy means dazed, weak, or unsteady, especially from illness. Thanks for listening.